welcome to the Innerfire podcast. My name is Hannah Mathis, and I will be hosting us today. Our guest is Johnna Carroll, my mom. Today's kind of a special edition episode because we are going to be talking about pregnancy and motherhood. At the time of the filming of this podcast, I am 34 weeks pregnant, so approaching meeting my baby very soon. And like many other young women, as I've gone through this process, I've had a lot of questions and wonderings about motherhood and just have had a desire to hear other women's stories. And so that kind of gave me this idea to have a sit-down conversation with my mom. She has 3 children who are all out of the house now, and I'm the oldest. So she's very experienced, and I believe her to be a very godly and wise woman. So I wanted you also to benefit from the same things that I've benefited from talking with her these past several weeks. So, Mama, do you want to introduce yourself a little and tell them about kind of your motherhood journey?
Sure, and I will take this opportunity to say how very excited I am in 6 weeks to, Lord willing, meet our precious little girl and our first grandchild. I cannot let the moment go by without saying how exciting that is for Scotty and me and for all of our family. But it is a joy to be with you, Hannah. I am excited about what we're going to talk about today. I have much enjoyed my role as mother. It has been the greatest experience in my life, being a mother, and I'm excited to talk about it. I love to talk to new moms because they're embarking on something very beautiful, and it's just a precious gift of the Lord. Motherhood is.
So let's start by giving a little bit more of the details of the kids you had and how close they were together, all that kind of thing.
Well, like a lot of people, we thought we would plan, but it didn't really go maybe just exactly as we had planned. And, the Lord knows better than we do what we need. So I had been teaching school for a couple of years when I found out you were on the way. But the plan had been for me to teach another year or 2 of school. So you were a bit of a surprise to us, a very pleasant surprise, I might add. And I'll tell just a little bit about how that came about. We had an idea that I might be pregnant, but we were kind of like, not sure, we might be a little ahead of ourselves. This could be too good to be true. And it was right at Christmas time of 1995. And so we took a pregnancy test, which came out negative. We were like, yeah, we've gotten ahead of ourselves. But that was just, a few days before Christmas. And so finally Christmas came and we were really still very suspicious. Things were just not right with me. And so the day after Christmas, Scotty got up really early and ran to the store and got a pregnancy test and ran back to me so I could take it first thing. And I remember standing there looking at that test develop. And I remember so well, Scotty said, "That's a plus if I ever saw one." And we just, embraced and rejoiced and ran up to his parents, got them out of bed, went to my parents, just couldn't wait. And so that was the beginning of our story. And of course you were born in September of 96. But what was kind of interesting about that was in March of 97, which was only about 6 months later, we found out that our second child was on the way, Jacob. And so you two were born 15 months apart. And then
and you should tell them the little story about the nurse.
Oh yes. So we'd not said anything to family, but we were pretty confident that I was pregnant. And so we just made an appointment with the family doctor and went up there and took the test and, just sitting in the room waiting. And the nurse had already been chatting with me, and she had left to come back, and she just sat down, there in front of me and just kind of did her thing and just looked up at me, and she said, "Hun," she said, "you're pregnant." Because she knew I had a newborn, practically a newborn. You seemed like a, very little baby, and she just thought, I don't know how this is gonna rock your world, but it would bide, And I'm like, it's okay, we're prepared for this. And it was just kind of a funny moment, because in her mind we had really messed up. But or in her mind, perhaps, I don't know how you're going to handle this, but here's what I've got to tell you. So it was kind of a funny moment, but we were very thrilled with that surprise as well. And then Andrew came along. Andrew and Jacob are only 21 months apart. So what that amounts to is I had
basically 3 children.
3 children in 3 years, because I also distinctly remember that when we brought Andrew home from the hospital in August of 1999, in just 2 or 3 days, we had your 3rd birthday party. So we had you turning 3, Jacob in the middle, and then a newborn. So all that to say, for those moms, and we'll talk about this as we get into this, that have a lot of small ones at your feet, I have been there. I have been through the chaos, and so I know where you are, and I know how tough it is.
And just hearkening back to what she said about kind of announcing or finding out that you were pregnant with me, was in Christmas of 95. I think it's kind of special that actually I have a very similar story, because we found out we were pregnant about a week before Christmas. So we were able to keep it to ourselves for a week, but we got to announce it to the family on Christmas Day, which is very similar to how they did it. So that's kind of special, and we actually have a little video of it. Maybe I'll insert a clip. I don't know. We'll see.
All I can say is our place erupted into tears of joy. We were like this, and then we were just all started boo-hooing. So, we were beside ourselves.
Yeah. All right. So now that we've got kind of some of those details of your story, back to a more kind of fundamental question. What made you want to be a mom in the first place?
It's something that I don't think I thought about a lot. I just knew that I wanted to be a mother. It wasn't something that I toyed around with or considered a whole lot. In my way of thinking, I had grown up with very strong family values. Family was very important to me, and so to me, becoming a mother was just a natural part of family life.
And we might want to say also how old you were when you had me.
I was 25 when I had you.
So, fairly young by all accounts.
And, Scotty was also from a very family-oriented person, and so this was just something that we wanted very badly. We knew that, barring something unforeseen, we wanted to have children. And in my case, I wanted to have several children because I was an only child. I did not grow up with siblings, and that was something that I always wanted, and I felt like I had missed out on a little bit. So the Lord took care of that right quickly by bringing Jacob along pretty soon.
And how did you feel when you were pregnant that first time, and maybe the other times? And I ask that question because I have found that it's kind of a roller coaster of emotions where you have moments of excitement and joy, and then moments of doubt. Like myself, this may sound kind of crazy because I always knew I wanted to be a mom, but I've had thoughts like, am I really ready to be a mom? I know having a baby is hard, so like, am I not going to enjoy life anymore after having a baby? Even, well, I love my baby. What if I don't feel a connection to my child? These are different thoughts I've had at different times. So what was that like for you?
I'm just thinking back to what my mother said jokingly. She reminded me that when she was pregnant with me, that she realized somewhere down the road, I can't back out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in this for there's no escape.
Mm-hmm.
I think those feelings are natural. I think that we have to talk to ourselves when we have those feelings. I'm sure that I did. I don't remember specifically doubts. Probably my doubts and my misgivings came later, as I realized how confining having a child can be and how what a commitment is involved. But I do think that it's only natural to have those questions about how will I respond to this? How we know, I think every woman knows this is going to change her life. So it's natural to wonder, how is this going to change my life and how am I going to respond? What is childbirth going to be like? Is it going to be rough? Is it going to be easy? Somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, there can be a lot of fear surrounding that.
I had fears. I do remember having some fears about what if something goes wrong? What if I were to lose a baby or have a stillborn child, or, the host of things that can go wrong. I did have those thoughts. I think it's hard not to have those thoughts, but thankfully we have the promises of the good Lord, that we know that He's working all things for our good, and that whatever happens, He's going to be with us in it. And so, that comforted me, and I hope will comfort other young women, that He knows where you are, no matter where you are, and He knows what's ahead.
Growing up, you spoke to me and my brothers many times about, how you prayed for us, and so many times I prayed this before you were born, which as a kid I was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy, but as an adult now I see what a blessing that is. So how did you pray during your pregnancy for your babies?
I prayed for your health and well-being, but most of all, I prayed for your salvation. And along with that, I have always prayed for a godly spouse for you, which I must say the Lord has beautifully answered those prayers. And, the Bible exhorts us to pray. It exhorts us to ask for what we need and what we desire. And I could think of no better way to bless my child than to offer my prayers on their behalf, that they would be blessed by the Lord, be carried by the Lord, certainly be saved at an early age. I was actually talking to Jacob and Josie about this one day, and I said, I feel the need to pray the prayer of salvation from an early age, so that a young person or a child doesn't have to bear the scars of sin in their life. It's not that you can't go on and have a good life, a good marriage, or whatever, being saved later in life, but you bear the scars and the memories of sin. And that is why I prayed that prayer, and I'm continuing to pray those prayers for my grandchildren. I pray not only for your child, but for my future grandchildren and have for many years. I am praying now for their salvation and for spouses for them and for their spouses' salvation, because, these are people we're talking about. Mm-hmm. They're important, and their lives will have bearing on many others. Yeah. And so to me, I just couldn't think of anything any more important.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to mention here as well that we are very blessed to have a kind of heritage of prayer warriors, specifically women, especially in your family, Mama, who prayed so much for you and for us that kind of imprinted the importance of that onto you. So do you want to tell them about
Absolutely.
that?
I'm one of the people who has been very blessed to have a godly heritage. My grandmother, whom I was very close to, my mother's mother, prayed fervently and regularly for me, and my mother did the same. And I know that my life has been extraordinarily blessed because of it. That's all I know to say. Mm-hmm. I can't really explain it except to tell you that I know that their prayers brought forth fruit mm-hmm. in my life. And because of that demonstration in my life, it caused me to want to carry that on mm-hmm. and do that for you all, because I just saw the Lord be so faithful to the prayers of his children that it was just undeniable for me. Mm-hmm. And so that has motivated me to every day of my life to pray.
Mm-hmm. I think as a young mom, it can be easy to get caught up in what do the books say, what is social media saying, what are my podcasts saying about all the best ways to raise a child and like the best way to approach labor and delivery and all these things. But I think really one of the best things you can do is simply to pray. Amen. And it's easy, very easy to lose sight of that, and instead to get focused on the things like we can try to control in our mm-hmm. own power.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I think that's a very good reminder. So moving on to once you had delivered me and then my brothers, you decided to be a stay-at-home mom. So what led to that decision?
The first thing that led to that decision, I think, was that Scotty had always wanted his wife to stay home, even before he met me and married.
If there's any feminists listening to this, close your ears.
He had always felt that children were best raised at home by their mother, and as we married and began to talk about this, I began to see his point. And as I looked at the Word of God, I saw that this is supported by the Word. And I just want to take this moment to read Titus 2, a very familiar passage of Scripture, but one that bears repeating. In Titus 2, starting out talking about the older women, the aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women, and listen to what these instructions say, to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. Well, to be a keeper at home to me means to be at home. I know we could have a thorough and probably full discussion about the issue of women staying home as opposed to working. And there's a lot of
podcast.
It's another podcast, and there's a lot to be said there. And I'm not against women working, but I am cognizant of the Bible having a lot to say about women being at home, and that is what we chose to do, and we're glad we did. And I feel for young women today. I know that it's a tough decision, but I will tell you a little story that to me highlights how God can bless the decision for a woman to stay home. I was teaching school on a government scholarship, which required me to work to pay it back. I had fulfilled 2 years of that, and I still needed 2 more. So I worked the 3rd year while I was pregnant with you, but there was 1 whole year left that honestly we didn't have the money for. It was quite a sum of money, and we knew this was going to be an issue, and we began to pray, knowing that I wanted to come home from my job, but I knew I had an obligation. And so we prayed, we began saving our money. We didn't have the full amount, but we had saved. And so we began to start a dialogue with the organization that was responsible for the loan. And I just remember so well, one of the last phone calls, I was prepared that she was about to tell me how this was going to work, how much we're going to have to pay a month or what was due, because we didn't know what the exact amount was going to be. And she told me that I wasn't going to owe near as much as I thought, and that the amount she gave me, you know how much it was? An amount that we had that we had saved for this purpose. God made a way to pay off that scholarship in a way that we had not dreamed. We didn't owe as much as we thought, and what we did owe was a small sum that we had saved. And our hearts just rejoiced because we knew that only the Lord could have worked that out, because it looked like a big hill to climb at the beginning. And bear in mind, as I mentioned earlier, you were a surprise. It was not, you were not a planned pregnancy. And it just made us realize that God was fully in control and He was blessing what we were doing. So, I would encourage the young women out there, if you're on the fence about this issue or have doubts, pray and seek God about it. You will be amazed at what He will do in obedience to His word.
I think finances play a tremendous role in how most people conduct their family planning, which is not, totally unwise. I think you need to look into that and plan, of course. And I know that I've had my own concerns about, medical insurance and different things like this that come up as a young couple, that the fear there is very real, because we like to feel like we are in control of things. But and I am in the midst of this journey myself, but I am learning to trust that if God gives you a child, He will provide for that child, and that I believe He will bless the desire for family, and that you shouldn't let finances necessarily bar you from having more children. I think that it's certainly an opportunity for God to show just how faithful He can be. So,
right, I couldn't agree more.
So, moving forward, what was the adjustment to motherhood like? Let's talk about that. And what kind of challenges did you face?
Well, to be honest, it was not easy. It was not a situation where I just came home and the house was just looked great and the baby was sleeping through the night, and that wasn't how it was.
I was a hard baby.
Hannah was
Spirited.
did not sleep well, and she cried a lot, and it was tough for the first few weeks, and it was a big adjustment. And I think I had in my mind, that I was no longer working, that, everything, the house was going to look great and the meals were going to be on the table and baby was going to be, so well taken care of, and I was going to do my little crafts and, and then several weeks into having a baby, I realized this is a heavy load I'm carrying, and I didn't know it was going to be this hard.
Yeah, I had a baby who didn't sleep, and for those of you who know my mom, she is no night owl. So I can only imagine how challenging that must have been.
Well, Scotty very much supported me and helped me during those times, as best he could. And we made it through. We did. But it was hard, and those were probably the hardest times for me, when I realized maybe this is harder than I thought. It's not working out just like I planned. And not only that, but I've got a few pounds I want to lose, and I'm not having time to, I'm not having the motivation to do that because I'm just so overwhelmed, and all, money's tighter now, and
it's just an overwhelming
I
time.
had a bit of light depression during that time. And this image of you come home and you're on top of the world, yes, there's nothing like it, and I will be the first to say you're the greatest thing that ever happened to us. But it's not to say that I didn't have times of frustration and doubt and disappointment, even, that it wasn't more glorious, more, beautiful.
It's not really glamorous.
It was not glamorous, but it was a blessed time. And the Lord saw us through it. And, He was there to pick us up and help us through the hard days. And I understand there are some women who, once they go through that I just described, they never want to go there again. They think, I will not get in this situation again. And that's a big mistake, because if I had done that, if I had taken that approach, I would have missed out on wonderful blessing number 2 and wonderful blessing number 3 that I cannot imagine my life without. So you have to take a long view of what you're doing when you're rearing children. So we can talk about that a little bit more in detail as we go, but I just want to emphasize that it's okay if you have down days and maybe you don't do as well as you thought you would. That's okay. Things will get better. Things will level out. It's just hard sometimes for the first while.
And I think especially in our current day, you didn't have this when I was born, but with social media, you see a very glamorized view of what child rearing can be like. I was kind of talking to my parents before this. There's a whole side of Instagram that's all about, families and stuff, and there's all these beautiful pictures and with people with beautiful homes, and their children are dressed so well, and it just looks so glamorous, but it gives us such a false expectation of what motherhood, especially of young children, is really like, I think. And
it's not reality. It's part of our reality, but it's not the sum total of our reality.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments of tears and frustration and pain that we don't always advertise to the world, but nonetheless they are there, and they must be gone through and dealt with.
So you've kind of touched on, you were feeling overwhelmed, you were very busy. What was your spiritual life like, your devotional times? Like, was it hard for you to find times to spend with the Lord then?
It was. I did try each morning, if I could get up a few minutes before you all. I did make it a priority to try to read the Word and pray. But I would encourage everyone that might be in that situation to always remember that, and I try to do this, that we can pray throughout the day. Mm-hmm. The Lord isn't only with us when we have our little devotion time in the morning. That's a good time, hopefully, to focus and concentrate. And of course, it's always nice to have uninterrupted prayer. But the Lord is right with us all through the day, and we can enjoy His presence then. Mm-hmm. And I just happen to think that the Lord understands. He understands what it's like to be a mom, because He created us, and He created the situations that we're in, and He knows our frame. And so I believe that He is holding our hand through that, and will make Himself known to us even in the busiest of times.
Yeah, I think it can be easy to, with the whole devotion thing, to almost start to take a legalistic view and to be very guilt-ridden because, I didn't have my 30-minute devotion this morning, whatever. I remember watching a YouTube video a while back where a girl asked the question, where in the Bible does it say thou shalt have a 45-minute devotion every morning?
Yeah.
We have a tendency to kind of put these extra rules on ourselves that don't really mean anything. It's really more, I think, the posture of your heart that is most important. So, moving on to our next question. As we mentioned earlier, you had 2 children and then you had 3 children, babies very close together. What was that like? And did you ever just feel like giving up and running away? And did you ever, feel regret, or how did that feel in the throes of those days?
I do have a distinct memory. It's one I'm not proud of. But as you can imagine, with three and under, it was pretty chaotic at times. And it was pretty much children and babies 24/7 there for a while. And I remember so much that I would tell my mom, and she reminds me of it occasionally. I would say, y'all are going to visit me in the nut house one day. I just know it. That was my little saying I would say when it was getting pretty crazy. But, I look back now and I just think, what a blessing. What an honor to be given 3 children that close together. There was a lot of joy. And Hannah, Jacob, and Andrew are very close now. They were close in age, and they've continued to be close in heart. And, it wasn't easy then, but it was well worth it. I would do it again, just like that, because we made it. And we just had to surrender ourselves to parenting. We just had to take the long view and understand that this is not going to be, it's not going to be this way forever. Mm-hmm. So let's make the best of it and enjoy this, because in no time they'll be big, and you were. And so, you know, I look back with a lot of fond memories now, because if you look back over something pretty hard that you did, I think you do look back with a little bit of satisfaction that somehow you made it. And I don't know how people do this without the Lord, because He's the one that sustained us and saw us through and gave us lots of laughs and lots of sweet moments, you know. I just praise Him that He brought us through. And you know, it definitely got easier. You all were so close in age. Might have been difficult when you were toddlers, but as you got older, you had similar interests, and so it made family life a bit easier for us, because we were kind of at this. You all went through the same phase together, so that was a pleasure.
As we were growing up, obviously being a very spiritual person, how did you kind of start spiritually training your children, even from a very young age?
You know, as soon as you all were able to talk, it wasn't long after that I started teaching you Bible verses pretty early. I wanted to get the Word, to expose you to the Word as soon as possible. And you will be amazed, young moms, how quickly children pick up on verses and songs if you will expose them to it. Of course, like a lot of mothers, I had books and music that I played for you that enabled you to learn songs and learn passages of Scripture, and that was a real joy. We just implemented that into our day. That was just part of life. It's not easy to sit and teach a child a verse, but the reward is well worth it when they can recite something for you and they're just that tall. It just gives you so much delight to hear that. And you know, as you grew older, of course, we did more and began, as we started homeschooling, to require more of you. And we have a lot of very fond memories and look back with a lot of joy at those times. And I actually thought it kind of fun to expose you to that early. You know, I had rather you be saying Bible verses or reading a Bible story or a song than to emulate what these pop artists and different ones do on TV. You know, sometimes I'll see kids that have watched a music video of a secular artist and know all the moves and can sing the song, and I have to wonder, why are you filling your child with that at 4 years old? You know, I question whether or not that's a good move. I would say that exposing children to healthy material is important. And of course, I must say here, the internet was very, very young when you all were little. I can't even imagine now how much more important it is that we are very aware of what our children are digesting, because it will take root in their hearts and lives.
You touched on it a little bit, but we also you had us singing in church from a very young age. Some of our listeners or viewers might enjoy seeing a little video of that, so maybe I can find a clip and insert that here.
And they're accompanied by Grandma.
I serve a risen Savior who's in the world today. I know when He is living, whenever men may say, I
assuming I inserted a video, hope you enjoyed that. That whole discussion kind of made me think of something else. I think we focus a lot on, which is a good thing, being intentional with your kids about teaching them the word, teaching them biblical music. But something else that we have talked a lot about, and even recently, is how kids will follow your example, your unspoken example. And, we just have had conversations about, well, I've been doing this way, and I don't really know why I do it, but Mama just did it, so I do it now. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, you don't get a better mirror into yourself than seeing your children and the things that they say that where they've copied you. And absolutely, children are absorbing everything. And I think the most convicting thing for me about that was they will absorb your attitude as well. And there were times that I could see the negative parts of myself being reflected in my children. That was extremely humbling. And, I think you have to determine what kind of home you want to have and what kind of children you want to have, and then live that before them. Scotty and I made a decision early on in our marriage that we would not argue, fuss, and fight in front of our children. We settled our differences privately and under control as best we could. We just...
That's not to say that, y'all were hiding it from us necessarily, or we never knew there were issues.
Right.
It just, you weren't contentious in front of us.
I didn't want you all to have any traumatic type experiences where you were very fearful or you're extremely confused. And to go along with that, I did not want a home where people raise their voices. I just never liked hollering. I just always saw it as very uncomfortable and counterproductive to peace and happiness. And so I just wanted a harmonious home. And so we tried to the best of our frail ability to keep our voices under control. And I believe I've seen that reflected in you all as you've grown up. Again, as you wisely said, imperfectly. But the point would be, I think that parents need to recognize that you set the tone for your home. What you do and what you allow is what your children are going to do and what they're going to allow. I can't expect my child to do what I'm not willing to do myself. And so that was kind of my guide.
And I would say when you make those decisions, not only is that having an impact on your children, setting the tone for what you want your home to be, it is also a testimony to other people who are watching you, because they are watching you and they will notice when you are different. Just like you notice a family that is raucous and maybe a little bit chaotic in public, so will people also notice the opposite of that. So I would keep that in mind as well. So we've touched on this a little bit throughout, but how did motherhood sanctify you?
Motherhood is a very sanctifying process, and it was very good for me. I had to really become unselfish. I had to give up some things that maybe I had wanted in life. But I realized that your welfare and your raising was more important and was better, and the reward was greater than anything that I could have dreamed up for myself. So, I learned to put someone ahead of myself. And not only did I learn that, I learned to enjoy it. I learned to enjoy serving others. I really did. It seems like, I know that seems kind of strange, but you have to have experienced it to fully understand it. Mm-hmm. I also, in this same vein, was serving my husband. And, it wasn't like my flesh never rose up and said, hey, what about me? But I will say that my husband, Scotty, was very supportive of me and made effort to find times for me to have breaks or to have opportunities to do things maybe I wanted to do. And so when you have that kind of support, it works out beautifully. It helps you go on and to do it with joy. And as time went on, I just began to see so much fruit in your lives that it motivated me to keep going and to keep pursuing what we had set out to do, and that was to, Lord willing, raise 3 godly children. Mm-hmm. So, but it does work out a lot of sin and rebellion in the heart that wants to put this flesh on the throne and say, I want what I want. You realize that may not be the best thing for you. Mm-hmm. And God may have something better for you that can only be achieved by giving yourself away.
Mm-hmm. Kind of as a counterbalancing question to that, I think we all know that there's a lot of dying to self as a natural byproduct of motherhood. But at the same time, I think, we do have to be self-aware and not run ourselves so hard that we then become emptied and don't have as much of ourselves to give. So is there anything you did, to kind of recharge yourself or to take care of your own mental health?
That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked it. There are 2 things that come to mind, besides, of course, my, own personal time with the Lord, which would be first and foremost. There were 2 things that I did that I felt were really helpful along those lines. The first was I got involved in a play group when you all were very small of other young moms. We were very similar in many ways in age, and we all had young children. We were all Christians, and that was very helpful to me. I developed some great friendships there, and that also turned into a Bible study later. We had a godly lady leading us in Bible study. I still to this day think about things I learned then. So I would encourage all young mothers to seek that out. You need that. And that will also give your children an opportunity to play with other kids while you have some time to get to know other moms and get out of the house maybe one day a week or whatever your schedule allows. The other thing was I really encourage exercise. Exercise is not only good for you physically, it's good for you mentally. And I would try to take walks, and those walks were so helpful to me.
It doesn't have to be, CrossFit.
That's right.
Just taking a walk can be so helpful.
I mean, I remember when you all were really tiny. We had a fenced-in backyard, and I just walked the yard while y'all played. That was just part of the day. I was so blessed to have that fenced-in yard so that I could go around the front part of the house, which we weren't really in a dangerous area, but it worked out great. So, and I did that as you all got older. We would go to a park, and I would say, okay, you guys can play. I'm just going to walk around the park or walk this track or whatever. So I tried to do double duty, give them a playtime when I would try to get a little exercise then.
How did having children affect your marriage?
It affected it in a very positive way, in that this is what we wanted, and we loved family life, and Scotty and I thoroughly enjoyed having our children all the way through. But that's not to say that it didn't hinder our couple time. And we figured out early on that we had to have some date nights. And, in an ideal situation, if you can have at least one yearly, even if it's just a weekend getaway, I highly recommend it. And here's why. Your children need you, but your spouse needs you too. And I have seen men and women give to the point that it was too much, that they left out their husband or wife. And that's not a good thing. And so we really were recharged by those date nights and those retreats, or over the past several years, even though our children are grown now, even when they were still at home, we would try to take a trip on our anniversary as often as we could. We might not have done it every year, but that was something we grew to look forward to. And to me, it was making our marriage a priority. And I really believe that's biblical. I think our marriage needs time and attention. And yes, sometimes even funding. We need to spend a little money on that, because we're investing in something very precious that we don't want to lose. And so I was very blessed that we, at the time our children were small, we lived near both sets of parents, and they were able to help us during those times. But if you are not in that situation, and if you are a believer, I feel confident that there is a couple, there is a family, a couple, someone in your church that would be happy to help you with your children for a night or two. And you can find someone that you trust. Again, I believe there are people that would be happy to assist you in some way in that. And so, pray about that and seek that out, because I really think it's important.
I was talking to another mom about your age the other day, and she said, for some people, even if date night seems like too much or too overwhelming for you, then you can do what she called couch time. This is something she and her husband did in the evenings, where she would sit with her husband on the couch for even 10 minutes, and their kids knew to just leave them alone for a while, and they would just talk, maybe get a cuddle in or two, and just have that time that was just for them.
I love that idea. And it's what it reminds me of is it's going to be probably a little bit different for every couple. Scotty and I both like to hike. It's something we really look forward to. Maybe you and your husband have another shared activity that you like. Maybe you'd like to just do that together without your children, and that's your time to reconnect. So I love that couch idea. That's really sweet. Or maybe it's just a breakfast out once a month, or again, use your own judgment and imagination as to what would be good for you.
Well, we're coming to a close here. We've talked about a lot of good things, but before we go, What advice would you give to young expecting moms such as myself, or just moms in general?
You know, the first thing I would say is child rearing is worth it. Child rearing is an investment, and I would encourage every mother or dad to take the long view of what you're doing. You can't take a short view, because if you take the short view, you see the frustration and the stress and the difficulty at times. And if you only look at that, you will get discouraged. But if you see down the road that you're trying to do something of really eternal value, then you can take whatever you're having to deal with at the time you can view it in its proper perspective. I would just like to read a biblical admonition to go along with this, and that is in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, a verse that often comes to my mind. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. There is a great reward for investing in your children, and I'm on I'm at the end of this journey. You know, I'm looking at the season of having grandchildren now. So I've completed my child rearing from start to finish, and I can say with all 100% clarity and honesty that it was worth it. What I did was worth it, and it was an investment, and it took something of me, but it gave me something in return. A few things I would say, just a little story about taking the long view, because this to me very much embodies what I'm trying to say. I heard this one day and it stuck with me. There was a traveler coming through, and he saw some men working. They were bricklayers. He asked the first man that was working, "What are you doing?" The first man said, "I'm laying bricks." He went on, stopped, and asked a second mason, "What are you doing here? What is this work about?" And the second one said, "I'm building a wall." He went on and asked yet a third man, "What are you doing?" And the third man said, "I'm building a cathedral." All three men were doing the same thing, but their vision for what they were doing was different. When you're in the throes of child rearing and your baby's crying, they've got a messy diaper, your dishes are stacked up, your laundry's behind, your air's quit working. If you stop and to me, that's, I'm laying bricks. I'm just trying to get through. But if you can say, you know, it's a little tough right now, but I'm working towards something. We'll get through this, and one day we're going to look back and say, we accomplished what we set out to do. We built a cathedral. We built a life. We built a child who knows the Lord, who knows right from wrong, who understands morals and how to be a good person, and loves family and loves community and loves his country. Those things are worth it. So I would encourage, first of all, take the long view. The second thing I would encourage is pray throughout the day. We mentioned that. I just think that the Lord's presence can be such an encouragement to young mothers and young fathers. When you're feeling down or frustrated, just seek the Lord. Say, "Lord, have mercy on me right now. Help me. This child is crying. Help me to get him to sleep." Or, you know, help them to eat this food that they're not wanting to eat, you know, and give me wisdom about maybe this is not the right time. So we must seek the Lord throughout the day. And the third thing, of course, is enjoy the journey. They do grow up. They do get out of diapers. In fact, they grow up so much, they'll soon get to where they don't even need you anymore. I distinctly remember so well when Andrew, my youngest, started taking baths by himself. All those years I had given baths to little ones, and I couldn't believe it when Andrew was taking a shower by himself. I'm just like, whoa, they don't need me to give him a bath anymore. And there will be so many of those along the way. They won't even need you to take them to school anymore or to practice. It goes by so fast. So enjoy those moments. Enjoy the gift of just that day that God gives you, and you will be blessed.
I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Mama, thank you so much
You're
for
very welcome.
joining us today. I really enjoyed this conversation and hope y'all did too. We've kind of just barely scratched the surface of motherhood today, so who knows, maybe there will be future podcasts down the line. If you have certain topics, maybe you want us to address or you'd like to ask my mom, send those in to us, and we'd love to include that in a future podcast. As always, don't forget to give a thumbs up on the YouTube video if you're watching, or give a 5-star rating if you're listening on a podcast app. If you know other young moms you think could benefit from this podcast, please share it to them. Pass it on to someone you think could find it useful. And y'all pray for me. By the time you hear this podcast, should be very close to delivering our little girl. So appreciate y'all's prayers. And again, just thank you for listening. Hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you in a couple weeks. See the red button?
Yep, and I see a red light.
Is my hair fixed?
No, you got one strand right here that looks out of place. Let me get situated here.